This is Elisa, Zhang, and I today have my good long-term friend Ling Kawaka. Did I pronounce it right? Kawaoka with
Yeah,
me today. And Ling
you're
and I
just doing
having
that
a
on purpose. Just doing that on purpose.
I basically have been a long-term friend with Ling. And we actually worked on a few deals together as well. But he's always kind of one step ahead of me. As such, he has quit his job last year and went full retire mode, I guess. But what's so awesome about Ling is I'm always admired with his drive and how he structure his life and etc. around cash flow and retirements. So very honored to have him this time with us. Hi Ling, how are you?
Good, good. Thanks for having me.
Great, awesome. So today we're gonna go over and kind of really learn about what Lane's trick to become retired in less than 10 years. And our hopefully our member can kind of learn from that. All right, Lane. Well, can you tell us a little bit about how old are you?
I may look 24, but I today am 34 years old today.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's the Asian glow, right? You definitely look 24.
yeah,
He looks like a fresh out of college guy.
Asian don't
Um,
ration.
Definitely. So Ling, how tell us a little bit how this journey kind of started. Like what really kind of changed your thinking? First of all, were you growing up like just wanted to do the 9 to 5 job? Tell us a little bit about your family and kind of like where you started this journey.
Yeah, so I think I grew up like any other, like Asian kid or most people in this space, right? Like we're told to go to school, study hard, go get a job, work at that job for 40 years. Um,
Yeah,
my parents kind of told me that for the longest time. I went to University of Washington, got an engineering degree, and then I
mm,
went to start to work. And then I bought a house to live in because again, that's what everybody says to do, which I
yeah,
don't necessarily agree with. And maybe we can talk about that later. But I bought that place to live in, and then I just started to rent it out because I was living on the road all the time. And that was where I got the bug for financial freedom because I realized I could just keep buying these rentals and it
yeah.
would exceed my income. And then that was my ticket out of the rat race, is what I sort of discovered.
So what kind of made you wanted to get out of the rat race? Like, what is your kind of big why?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of people, when you start out working in the workforce, you get a college degree, you go in there, but they kind of, you're the new guy, right? The
Yeah.
FNG, as they say. And
What does that
really,
stands for? FNG.
um, effing new guy.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was civil engineering, so they stick us out in the field as sort of the inspector, and you're out there in the code. I was giving job briefings to guys like older than my dad's age, grumpy, blue collar work crews,
Yeah.
and it sucked. It was like a thankless job. It was very stressful. It was 100% travel. Um, it was
Oh,
just not a
travel. Like, where were you traveling to? Like, because
Mostly, I mean, we were working out in kind of like always the boondocks, right? So never like the bigger places would be like Billings, Montana. That'd be a
uh,
big town. We'd be like out in the middle of nowhere. So a lot
yes.
of time in the hotel room in the evenings to like sit and think. Um, I did one of those online masters programs too during that time, but mostly a lot of time to just sit and think and ponder, is this what I
Yeah.
can want to do? And then you start to see the people who, you transition into their director roles, and you're like, I don't want that lifestyle. Like
Yeah.
it's not
What do
worth it.
they do? Do they get to travel to a better place, or like what kind of turns you off? Because we were always told about climbing the ladder. Like, what did they kind of do? Like, and then you kind of don't see the future in that.
I think like they just didn't have a family life. They were never really home. They're really just cranky people.
Yeah.
And now that I'm outside of corporate America, I mean, if you're 55, 65, 70 years old, and I say this respective, this is not the blanket um, information, but like, look, if you're still in that middle management, role, you're
Yeah.
not there because you're a shining personality. You're there because you're stuck and you can't, you need money, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
it's not, I didn't
So
want to
for
be in
you,
that position.
was it managing other people that you didn't kind of really like, or, what kind of really turned you off?
I, I think it was just a lot of hours, and it's just like, well,
Mm.
this is cool right now since I don't have a family. And I was
Yeah.
traveling in first class all the time. I thought that was cool for a little bit,
Yeah.
because it's kind of neat. But after a while, you can see like the guy who's 40 years, 50 years old next to you on the plane, and you're like, is that what I want to be doing in 20 years?
Yeah.
you know and it just put things in perspective. And there was one time where I had this one employee who worked for me, and then I found out a couple years later he died, and like nobody cared, right? And I'm like,
Wow.
all right, nobody gives like two craps about anybody out here. They're all here to get their paycheck or to get their
Yeah.
scorecard, get their bonus, and
Did
they say all
nobody
this
just
stuff.
nobody talked about it when he kind of died? Like,
Well, it's just like, well, didn't follow the rules, whatever, whatever. And I don't know, it's just very like impersonal. And a lot of times they can't
I
say
see.
anything because they're gonna get sued, right? You know how it is in
I
corporate,
see. Oh,
right?
so he died at the job.
Yeah,
I see.
yeah,
Yeah. And then he has a family or something as
yeah,
well. That is
yeah,
very sad. Very sad. Yeah. We definitely don't want to be, I just can't imagine someone lost their first, like, probably the breadwinner of the house. That's just a sad story. Yeah.
right. So I mean, just and I hear these stories all the time from other people. There's always something that like uh, shakes them out of their reality, whether
Hmm.
it's like, one of my buddies was like, oh, he went to like a retirement party, and it was like some lady who worked there for 40 years, and all
Yeah.
they had is like crappy Chinese noodles that they got catered in. And it was like, is this what like you live for? I mean, they don't even give those stupid Rolexes, the Seiko watches anymore, right? Like it's just
Oh,
like give you some crappy Chinese noodles and then you off on your way and nobody cares.
wow. Oh, so this is like company hosted
Yeah, like a
party. Oh my
retirement
God.
party. And
Yeah. Yeah. That is very sad. I'm speak of which, I'm going to host a retirement party soon over here, and you will be invited. It wouldn't be. It probably is going to be some Chinese noodles, but anyway,
yeah,
that'll
yeah,
be
but
a
that
good
won't be
time.
the only thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Great. So that kind of really got you thinking about retirement. Now tell me a little bit about these hours that you like really spent thinking about it. Like what epiphany did you come up with? And then like what type of mastermind class were you kind of enroll yourself in? And then what you kind of got out of it?
Yeah, I think it all happened really slowly. So I bought my first rental property in
Hmm.
Seattle. It was $350,000. So I put an $80,000 down payment,
Uh-huh.
normal conventional financing, and then I rented it out for $2,200 a month, and the mortgage
Okay.
was $1,600 a month.
Oh,
So
that's a
for
good cash flow. Yeah.
well, it wasn't 1%, right? And
Yeah.
but at the time it was like, oh, the rents are like a few hundred more dollars more than my mortgage. And I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, I'm making like $400 a month or like $5,000 a year on this thing.
Yeah.
All I have to do is like do this a few more times and accelerate it forward, and then I'll be out of this rat race. And that was
Right.
where that was like where it tipped the scales, and it was like, wow, like if I just keep doing this, I'll I'll get out of the rat race. And that was when I started to, you mentioned like what masterminds, what education, like that was where I just started to devour all the free stuff out there, like the podcasts. And
Hmm.
this is back in 2010. There wasn't too
Yeah.
many stuff like that back then, but reading the
Yeah.
books, learning about rent to value ratios, learning about not buying properties in places like Seattle. That was a
Yes.
primary market where you don't have the rent to value ratios to be able to cash flow, and just getting a little bit more sophisticated about that stuff. And then slowly, as I started to empower myself with that information, I
Mhm.
started to save up for my second property. And I was definitely not 10 years away from retiring, but
Yeah.
the 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 wheels were in movement at that point.
Yeah. So you mentioned about saving, and I know that's a big element of how you can accelerate this, crunching into, like at 10 years or shorter period of time. Can you tell us a little bit about like how you actually supercharged your saving over there?
Yeah, I mean that's no secret to this, right? You got to save your money. I don't do any of the no money down stuff. Some of the
Right.
broke people type of tactics. I just save my money and I put money down on 20% down payment to buy the next property.
Why do
Basically,
you
what I
do
do.
20%? Like
So a lot
not,
of it,
yeah.
well, I'm non-owner occupied. I don't want to
Okay.
do any of the house hacking stuff. I think
Okay.
that's ghetto. I don't want to live with my tenant, right? And that's just a personal choice, right?
Yeah.
I rather not live with them, know.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, kind of going back to like, like saving, like like my secret is like I didn't graduate with like a huge amount of student loans, but nor did I have like 100 grand to net worth. I didn't have really have anything.
Yeah.
But my competitive advantage is like I was able to work on the road. So that's what I did for like 3 years. That first
Yeah.
house I lived in, I realized I was only there on Saturday. So I just asked my boss and I was like, I'm just gonna go on expenses 100% of the time and live in the company hotel where we're
Uh-huh.
at. So I
Yeah.
essentially saved, I didn't pay any rent anywhere. So I was able to save like 50 or $70,000 a year. Like
Wow.
there'd be some weeks where like it would be a little game to myself again when I was like in the hotel room by myself thinking. I was like,
Yes.
I'm only gonna try and spend $100 this week of my own money. Like
Wow. Wow.
it was just crazy. Like,
Yeah. So wait, so you bought a house, but you never lived in it. Did you like if that turned into a rental, I'm guessing?
yeah, I lived in it for like probably about like half a year, I'm
Yeah.
guessing. And then I'm just, sitting there on the weekend, like,
Yeah.
what? I'm not in this thing, and I'm even enjoying this thing. Maybe I should just like rent this thing out. And it started with like a question, right? Like,
Yeah.
isn't there a higher best use for this thing, right? Than
Yeah.
me just living in it and keeping my stuff here.
Yeah. Yeah. And then keep it there. So you then moved out. That was really smart and be able to kind of negotiate, take what your job is offering you, and be able to kind of negotiate to stay in basically 100% living expenses of the company,
Right.
other than maybe some food and etc.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, there
yeah.
there was some times where like I would like go to like the Tacoma casino and like
Yes.
get buffet there. And I would like come back like late on Friday, and I'm still on expenses, right? Because I'm still like 30 plus miles away from work or
Yeah.
home base.
Oh,
So
okay. So
I'd
that
go
was the
there
policy.
and just eat like a shit ton. And then
Yeah.
like I wouldn't have to really eat till like Saturday noon. And then I would eat my one meal, and then I would like leave early on Sunday to go back to work, and I would, go on company expenses once again.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I would
Wow.
like basically like spend no money. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, and then you're making like, if you don't mind share, when you first started, how much were you kind of making?
I think I was making like in like the 70s or 80s, 80
Okay.
grand a year range.
Yeah.
And this was back in 2007,
Yeah.
2009.
Yeah.
So I was pretty lucky because we all know what happened in 2009. Everybody got slaughtered. And
Right.
I was kind of like really lucky to have a job at that time.
Right.
Like, so
Yeah.
it was fine. It was kind of a good situation just to hunker down and save money. I mean, like a lot of like today, like my clients, like they save maybe like $30,000 at least, and
Yeah.
that's cool, right? You can buy like a turnkey rental every year for
Yeah.
30 grand. Some of
Yeah.
the better ones are like 50 grand, but for me back then, I was saving like 50 or 100 grand a year for a few years.
Wow. 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 That's amazing. That's so it's about like 80% of your paycheck that you were able to
Probably.
kind of save. Well, really probably less than that because the Uncle Sam probably got a big portion of
Yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, my
Even
AGI wasn't that high, right? I mean, when you're
yeah.
making under 100 or 200 grand, you don't really pay too much taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think it's about 150 or so, but anyway, yeah, that's definitely. So you were, basically living at the company and then etc. But your income also needs to increase. So then you put that into the rental. Tell us a little bit about more. What's your next step after, you bought a Seattle home and realize that's not what you want to go for? And then what kind of goes from there, like to help you kind of accelerate the income
Yeah, so
side?
the first property I bought was an A-class rental. So
Uh-huh.
definitely what you don't want to buy
Right.
with it, as I started to learn a little bit more. So I went and bought a duplex out in West Seattle, Southwest Seattle. So
Okay.
the numbers were a little bit better. It was like 250,000 and it
Yeah.
rented for 2,000 a month.
Wow.
So a little bit close, still not the 1% rent to value ratio, but this is back
Yeah.
in
Oh
2011-ish.
yeah, you can't buy a place in West
Yeah,
Seattle duplex for like even half of it for 200
I know. I
nowadays.
know.
Yeah.
But
Like at
then
800.
at
Yeah.
that time, the prices were going up and more, right? Around 2012. And I was getting
Yeah.
kind of priced out. And I was like, what the heck? I'm not cash flowing anymore.
Yeah.
And then that was where I realized, yeah, you don't buy properties in California, Washington, Seattle.
Yeah.
You buy them out in like the Midwest, the South. So that was where I bought my first turnkey rental in Birmingham
Uh-huh.
back in 2012, 13. And it worked. So I
Yeah.
sold those two Seattle properties and then did a 1031 exchange and bought 9 in
Wow.
Birmingham, Atlanta, Indianapolis. And then one day I woke up in 2015 and I had 11 rentals.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
And how much cash flow were they producing then?
Probably about like $200 or $300 comfortably every month for each of
Per
them.
unit.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so
mean,
you
because
had
you're gonna
about
have
two.
like one third or one fourth of them just like absolutely lose money for you, like so. But on
Yeah,
average, a couple $100 at least a cash flow per.
yeah, gotcha. Why did you never do a house hack again? Because it seems like the living style, it's not so comfortable for you. Looking back, would you kind of use that kind of strategy to help you accelerate?
Maybe I could have, but like I wasn't home, right? I think
Yeah, so
that,
you
and
do it
then
like 100% house hack, essentially.
yeah, and I'd like, I was
Yeah.
like a bachelor, like, right? Like, I mean, who wants to do that? I think the guys who are doing the house hacking have like a really loyal spouse and
Yeah.
that's not going to leave them if there's some other random dude or dudette living in the house with them.
Yeah.
Like, I was single, but I didn't want to stay single. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want some random
Yeah.
stranger living
So
in
it's a
my house.
lifestyle
Yeah,
choice.
and
Yeah.
plus I was already to the point where like I don't want to invest locally. I'd rather
Mm,
invest where the numbers make sense because I know
makes sense.
a lot of investors that I work with, they just like can't get over the intellectual hump about getting out of their comfort zone and investing in somewhere they've
Yeah.
never been. And
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, cool, man. Financial freedom's not for everybody. I guess you could house hack,
Right.
right? If
Right.
you,
Right.
but
Yeah.
in that way,
It's
I
trading.
think
Yeah.
you give up
You trade it off
your dignity,
comfortability. Yeah.
yeah, and your
Your
dignity,
privacy. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, or
Definitely.
privacy, whatever you call it.
Definitely. Great. So after the turnkey, but you do you still do turnkeys nowadays?
No, I've kind of scaled out of that as, we've both kind of done our initial things as you have, right? You
Yeah.
kind of reach a point where like those turnkey rentals, they're just not scalable. At
Yeah.
at 10 or 11 rentals, you're going to have an eviction or two every year. Some
Yeah.
kind of big issue that pops up every quarter, and which is fine because the property manager deals with all that nonsense.
Right.
But you offer what, $3,000 passive cash flow, a few $100 per, like you're going to need 30 properties.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're going to have 3 times as many evictions and headaches.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah.
not scalable.
Gotcha. So then what is your next journey?
So
Um
that was when I followed the breadcrumbs of like, well, I was investing in like single family homes. Maybe I'll go to multifamily homes, right?
right. Right.
And that was kind of where I found other doctors, lawyers, engineers, high net worth folks, and I realized what they were doing was they were investing in private placements and syndications so they could
Yeah.
diversify their money over different geographic locations, different deals, different operators.
Yeah.
And then it made total sense, right? But it was kind
Yeah.
of a reboot because I couldn't talk to brokers and property managers anymore, or I shouldn't. I should spend more of my time finding other high net worth passive investors and seeing
Yeah.
what they were doing.
Yeah. So take us through the journey. You switched over to multifamily. Private placement is essentially investing into a deal through a limited partnership, like kind of like a passive investment, total passive investment, right? Now tell us a little bit about that. Um, you know, where you kind of started, is there any pivot points where you realize there's a certain role that can fits you better, um, etc.
Yeah, I think I was a little bit more open to the idea than your average investor out there, right? Most
Right.
investors, they want to do everything themselves. There's an ego component too, and they don't trust anybody. And
Yeah.
I had a lot of those feelings too, but I knew because I joined up with some of these groups and just had the models, right? I had the
Yeah.
people who are older than I was, higher net worth, more experience, and they kind of showed the path. And I think that's invaluable and something
Uh-huh.
that most investors don't have because they kind of live in their own world by themselves. They
Right.
don't have a network.
So you
Um,
went out, you pay probably for your education. That's kind of one thing I realized too. It's that you can only consume so much free stuff until you hit a point where you're like, okay, I gotta pay for my education, right? To kind of
yeah,
get to know
yeah.
people.
and
Yeah.
and there's like that's you see so many people, right, and they all fall in these certain categories, like you said, the guy who like listens to all these podcasts, they
Yeah.
get all this free stuff, they kind of know a lot, but they don't know anything about certain things. There's huge holes, and because
Right.
they just don't have the network nor the experience.
Right.
um and that's fine, right? I mean, each to their own. I mean, I kind of got into it and I was like, all right, I understand that you want to go into private placements and LP positions, but I still want to maybe do like a 20 or a 40 plex by myself or with a partner that I trust so we don't
Yeah.
have to syndicate. Because that at the time was kind of scary to me to be the lead.
Right.
But as I got to digging through the numbers and we're looking at deals in Texas, Dallas, and this is way
Uh-huh.
back when things were actually good,
Hmm.
like you run the numbers and you realize you're competing with so many unsophisticated mom and pop investors and it just doesn't
Hmm.
make sense.
Hmm.
and and then you ask the property manager like, how are people making this work? And the even the property manager is like, yeah man, like you're just competing with a bunch of like unsophisticated mom and pop investors, and this is why the lending in this area is so bad, because it's just a
I
bunch
see.
of amateur hour. I mean, until you get above $1 million net or loan size, or 60, or I'll even say 90 units, right? Like we all
Yeah.
say 60 units is you want to get above because you want that property manager in the office.
Yeah.
But the after operating some smaller properties, I really think it's 90 or 100 units is what you need to get above, because you need that handyman. You don't
Yeah.
just need somebody leasing agent there 100% of the time. You need that handyman who is gonna help you so you don't pay like $900 to some third party plumber to come out do a small
Right.
fix.
Right. So it's a caliber of the team that helps you professionally managing them. That's very different.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
right.
So that's when you probably looked to throw out deals. You're like, these are not penciling out. So maybe you needed to kind of rethink and repivot. That's what I love about you is whenever there's a challenge and etc., you just keep on thinking about how do I pivot. Um, and then now, kind of fast forward a little bit more. Um, tell us about your first deal. Like, tell us about like the first, syndication deal that you have done, and how that kind of helped you get started. What you're
Well,
doing.
the first private placement syndication deal I technically did was back in 2012, and I lost my money because the guy was a
Yeah,
shyster.
yeah,
So, a lesson one is only work with people you know, like, or trust, or have first degree of separation. Like, none of
yeah.
this, like, I got it through a random referral, and the guy probably didn't know what he was talking about, nor did he invest himself.
I
So
see.
should I have asked you like, oh, who should I work with, right? I wouldn't have landed with that individual and lost my money.
Yeah, yeah,
But I tried it again, you get back on
yeah,
the horse.
yeah.
So yeah, the first like real deal where I actually kind of knew what was happening, um, yeah, just went in as a passive and just you don't really do much, right? Like you just
Yeah,
ask around, develop relationships with other people who don't have a dog in the fight
yeah,
and who you sort of trust, which takes a long time to develop those
yeah,
kind of real relationships.
yeah.
And then, you invest and you see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah. So when you talk with the people, is there like certain questions that you ask to kind of vet out who your operators are? I think
What?
it's very important to invest as a passive investor, to kind of learn the loop there. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of questions to ask, but like you should kind of know whether you're going to invest with them even before you start to talk to them. You should get them vetted through your network,
yeah,
investing via proxy.
yeah,
Especially because at the time I was a non-accredited investor.
yeah,
And look, if you're a accomplished syndicator, taking non-accredited investors is really dumb. It makes no sense. And the worst thing is this non-accredited investor just peppers you with a whole bunch of annoying questions because
yeah,
that as soon as like cash flow is like lagging behind 1 quarter or 1 month, that non-accredited investor is like really feeling it because that's all the money they have.
yeah,
Nobody wants to take that non-accredited investor unless that syndicator is desperate and you don't want to invest in
yeah.
those deals.
However, I don't, I, I get what you're saying on the non-credit investors, but I do have. I think if they're not credit and sophisticated, if it's someone that you have interacted a long time, we do still take them right now, right? Because they behave like a credit investors. Um, I I think that there's some differences over there, but
Yeah.
that's my personal
Yeah.
opinion.
I think that
Yeah,
what I'm thinking of is like more like somebody just listening to this and like, all right, what question? Because always those non-accredited guys that have too much time on their hand and they're got their like pen right now. Like, what question should I ask? No, don't do that. Do not do that. Spend your time building relationships with other passive investors and use that as your primary form of vetting these deals out.
yeah,
Because I talk to investors all day long as a syndicator, and I'll tell you what, I can talk to investors in my sleep.
yeah,
It does them no good to talk to me because I can go on autopilot and just do this stuff in my sleep. So with
yeah,
that said, I'm sure every syndicator is like that too.
yeah,
Talking to the syndicator, you're gonna get the same answers to the same old question they've heard a million times. Like it's not even gonna make a difference. It's like going into like the car dealership and like test driving. Like what is test driving going to do? Like they all the cars are pretty much the same. You
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. And then, but you talk to someone who has driven the car that you want to have as a consumer, and that kind of makes a difference, right?
Right, right. Are they actually paying? Have they stolen your money? Right? How
Right.
many
Yeah.
how many deals have they been in? Right?
Right. Right. Yeah. And then also, that's also another reason why I believe in like, hey, I should passive invest if I want to kind of go down the road of being a syndicators and etc. before I bring other people's money into a deal,
Right,
right?
right.
So then you kind of test drive with your own money before, getting other
Yeah.
people
I mean,
involved in it.
another
Yeah,
example, very similar. Like I on my website, I have like a list of 25 questions to ask your property
that's
manager,
good. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But I tell everybody, I caveat and say, do not ask these questions because
yeah,
a good property manager has too much doesn't have time to court you into a like a relationship, like a tenant owner relationship,
yeah,
right? Their results speak for themselves.
yeah,
Everybody can answer all 25 of those questions perfectly, unless you're an
yeah,
idiot. And yeah, maybe you just want to use it to get rid of like the bad operators. But
yeah.
for the most part, it's just going to be wasting your time and it may alienate you from that relationship,
Yeah, that's a very interesting
right?
aspect. Yeah, definitely.
Because in
Yeah,
that situation, that property manager knows if you're a pain in the butt client, and they may
right.
just like start answering the questions incorrectly on purpose.
Yeah,
To,
I never had that experience, but that's a very good point. Of course, when you asking a salesman, the salesman's going to tell you the product is great. And but talking with other consumers is certainly now. Where do you go find these consumers? Is because tell us a little bit about your network that you kind of build up. Let's kind of switch the gear a little bit about this network group that you have created, and it's probably where you spent most majority of your entire time on. Yeah, right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Well, I'd like to get some of your thoughts because I mean, okay, so where do you go find these high net worth accredited passive investor types, right? Because number one, they're super busy. They don't
Yeah,
have any time on their hands because they have families because they're mostly
right.
making over 150, $200,000 a year,
Yeah,
right? They're not trolling around on the internet forums all day long. A
yeah,
special site that we all kind of that's very popular, but mostly it has a bunch of broke people,
yeah, yeah,
or they're not really at like happy hour free meetups. That's just for people who are broke and they hear that real estate's a great way to get rich,
yeah.
right?
Or
So I
yeah,
don't know I
yeah,
don't know where to go, but I know where not to go. But maybe that's a
right.
good start.
Yeah, so kind of creating a little bit about, I do think, before I joined any of these group before, it does feel like, hey, everywhere you go, you're like the smartest person in the room. You don't want to be that. You wanted to kind of find out whether paid or not, it's likely mostly paid events that you want to go to where like everybody else is so much smarter than you. And that's where you kind of really learn.